Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show that covers all things marketing. The GSMC Marketing News Podcast gives you the latest marketing news, from what major businesses have planned for the coming year to the newest trends in advertising, from podcasts, digital and streaming, to the old standbys of radio, television, and billboards. Whether you're a marketing agent or a business trying to expand your brand, you've come to the right place. The GSMC Marketing News Podcast starts now.
Hello everyone and welcome to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, episode 91, but I got some interesting content for you today. We did our 90th podcast episode and it was great. It was a celebration of everything we had been working towards, or at least that's what I wanted it to be. So what I did was I sat down and I wrote out the 90 lessons that I think we have all learned over the past 90 episodes. I then sat down to record it and I realized, okay, this podcast might have to be a part 2. And then today when I went to record this episode, part 2, I'm like, all right, this may be a 3-part episode, but here's the thing. Here's the deal, guys. I'm okay with that because I think that is a fantastic way to kick in and celebrate this podcast by giving you a 3-part series talking about everything we have worked on, giving you ideas, giving you new light on old ideas, or coming up with new things together through those 90 lessons. So I am perfectly okay with this being part 2 of 3 parts of the 90 lessons we have learned over the 90 episodes of the GSMC Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jakewish, and it makes me so incredibly happy to be saying that we are on episode 91. I am proud. I am ecstatic. I am overwhelmed with the comments that we get on our episodes and the stories that I've gotten to hear from you guys about how our podcast has helped you. It means the world to me, and I love doing these. I love creating this content, and so I want to keep doing it with you guys. So if you feel the same way, if you feel our love connection, you feel like you are a part of this family, then please rate, review, and subscribe, because it just helps us out so much to know who's listening. This way we can better curate our content for you. If you haven't listened to part 1 of this 3-part series, I definitely recommend you go check it out. We covered the first 30 lessons. We are jumping right back in with number 31, which is expanding your company. So before, in part 1, we talked about expanding your team, but expanding your company is a little bit different. And it's the reason I always recommend to people that your brand should be your company, but your product shouldn't be your company, because your brand needs to be something that can expand and grow and change with your company, whereas your product is what you sell right now. But expanding your company might mean, all right, well, we sell only decaf coffee right now. We really wanted to cover the market of decaf coffee. But now that we've covered that market, we are well versed in that market and in the industry, we are ready to move into caffeinated coffee. Now, I'll be honest with you guys. It's been 91 episodes. I continuously use coffee as our example of marketing, and I have no idea if there's strictly a decaf coffee like company. I don't think that's a thing. But for the sake of this argument, there is. So you are deciding to expand into the caffeinated coffee world. If you have focused your brand and your company solely around decaf coffee, then you're not going to be able to expand into this new world. So always ensure that when you want to expand your company, your brand is able to expand with you. Number 32, giveaways. People love free stuff. I cannot tell you the amount of user engagement you will get if you're giving away a keychain. I used to work for radio stations, and sometimes we would literally give away stickers, and people would lose their minds over stickers. It is ridiculous the amount of stuff people will engage with just for something free. So giveaways are a great way to engage with your audience, participate with your community, and then give away free swag so that it's like merchandising, basically. They'll get to take a keychain home with them, and every time they look at their keys, they're going to see your brand. Number 33. We started doing this segment where we talked about companies and how the companies were dealing with the coronavirus or different marketing techniques that companies had been using over the years that I really just admired. And the number one company I always seemed to bring up was the Hollis Company. The Hollis Company is the best example I have for good marketing. They know how to create content so targeted for their audience that you feel like Rachel Hollis herself is having a conversation with you. Recently, it was announced that Rachel Hollis and her husband Dave Hollis, who both own the Hollis Company, are divorcing. And that can be a very, very difficult thing to open up about on your audience, with your audience, on your platform, and then to have to continue working together. A lot of people, I think, were nervous that we weren't going to get content for a while, which seems very, very selfish. And it totally is. We should absolutely not expect anything from them right now. But Rachel Hollis and the Hollis Company continuously deliver. They are still putting out podcast episodes. They are still writing blogs. They are still sending out their newsletter. They are still staying on top of it. And it is a great example of knowing your company so well that you can have a hard time, you can take a break and still have content generated. They clearly had backup podcast episodes, backup newsletters, and they trust their team so much that they're able to take a break, they're able to take a step back and deal with what's happening in their lives and still let their marketing grow, which is the perfect example during the coronavirus. Like I already said, there was so much going on. That it was overwhelming to have to think about your marketing, which is why I always tell you guys to plan ahead and to be ready so that when crisis hits, you are able to keep your marketing going while you deal with the crisis. Number 34, blogging. Blogging is not out of date, and I hate when people say it is an old form of media now because it absolutely is not. There is a great proper way to do fantastic blogs. It's great to do long form content. Certain generations love that. Millennials, Gen X, not so much Gen Z, but we'll work on them. Maybe we'll get them into blogging. But blogging is just a great way to really show that you curate your content and that you care about your audience. Number 35, vlogging, V as in Victor. So this is slightly different from blogging because blogging is a great way to really sit down, curate the content, and think about what you're going to write, whereas a vlog is intended to be a little bit more natural, and it is to open up the gates of Emerald City so that you can actually meet the wizard. This way you are able to be more connected and more honest with your audience while still being able to edit and stage things as you will. There's actually one of the most famous vloggers in the world. Her name is Lily Singh. I'm sure you have all heard of her. She recently said that her first vlog ever, everything was staged. It was practically scripted. So although the intent is to show your audience who you really are, it is perfectly acceptable to still edit and to still only show the good sides, the good raw sides of who your company is. So show them what you want to show them, but don't be afraid to show them the raw bits because they do want to see that you are a real person underneath everything. Number 36, DIY. So I know you think your product is perfect. And why would anyone ever want to alter it? However, in the time of the coronavirus where we're all bored and making banana bread, it is a great time to show an alternate use of your product, how versatile your product can be. And the best way to do that is through DIY projects. Again, we will use coffee as our example. If you sell coffee and you're thinking, all right, so people can obviously drink this. What else can they do? Why not do a DIY video, blog, microblog on Instagram tutorial on how you can use coffee as a face scrub? It's just an alternate way to use your product, but it will engage your audience and it may encourage someone to buy your product who never wanted to buy it before because maybe they didn't drink coffee, but they have bad skin. It just opens more gates for you, and it's a really great way to be creative and interact with your audience. Number 37, infographics. Infographics are, in my opinion, underused and undervalued. It can be a lot of work to put a good one together, but it is a great way to give your audience a ton of information in a digestible way. So throw together an infographic. Guys, you can do it for free on the internet. Do not hire someone to put together an infographic. And then have it on Instagram, but also have it on your website. And make it about something that will actually impact your audience. If you want to talk about how your beans are made for your coffee, do an infographic about that. Any information that is too big or intimidating to explain to your audience, put it in an infographic. It is just a great way to visually see that information. Number 38, Disney, another company that we spent quite a bit of time talking about and no regrets at all. Disney's marketing, time and time again, has just proven that brand and brand experience is so incredibly important. You need to know from their website to their blogs to their social media to being in a park to meeting a character, it's that same brand experience. They keep it so genuine and so consistent with who they are and who they've always been, while still becoming more modern and changing with the times as needed. I could talk about Disney's marketing all day, trust me. Number 39, customer engagement. Here's what I want you to do. We talked for a whole episode about it, and I've talked about it in other episodes too. But customer engagement is so important for your brand. It helps you with the Instagram algorithm. It helps you build a community. It helps you create user-generated content and returning customers. Every single time, here's what I want you to do. Every single time you post on Instagram, stay in the comments section for 30 minutes. Every time someone comments, reply back to them with a good reply, with a long reply. And then after that, you can go off, you can do whatever you want, but every time someone replies, at least, at the bare minimum, like it. You don't have to comment back to every single one, but make sure you always, always like it. Big companies still do this, so don't feel like, oh, we have so many comments, it's a lot of work to have to go through and like them all. It's not, and your audience will appreciate it. Number 40, TV show marketing. So we did a few episodes on this because it's a topic that I find truly, truly interesting. But it's the idea of how TV shows have had to develop a new form of marketing and develop a new way to express their content through their platform because times have changed. There is no more, all right, on Sunday night we watch Desperate Housewives and then afterwards House is on. I don't know if that was ever a lineup of shows, but you know what I mean. There was every Sunday night you watched this show, and all week that TV network would show a promo of what that episode was going to be for that week. But now, nobody has a network. Nobody watches TV shows through cable anymore. It's all Quibi and Netflix and Disney Plus and all these other really great streaming services. So how do you continue to promote your show and promote your content when you no longer have the ability to use commercials? So it's a really great way just to show how you can get creative with your marketing and expand your brand and learning how to change it. So go listen to that full episode if you are interested. Okay, everyone, we are going to go ahead and take a short break from the podcast, but when we come back, we are jumping right back in. So stay tuned for more of the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquish, and I'll be right back.
Golden State Media Concepts Technology Podcast covers everything tech. The hottest mobile phones, tablets, games. We review it, rate it, test it. Whether you're Microsoft or Apple, Android or iPhone, we'll give it to you again. Black and white. The Golden State Media Concepts Technology Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie, and we are on episode 91 of our amazing podcast. I know I obviously have no right to call it amazing. It is my own. But hey, I listen to the episodes too. I think it's pretty incredible. And the thing I actually find more incredible is the community we've been able to build over the past few episodes. And gosh, 90 episodes deserved a big party. I wanted 90 red M&Ms. I wanted a bunch of balloons and music and entertainment. And I kept thinking, okay, what are we going to do? What are we going to do for our big episode? Other than, I do have a balloon. I went out and bought a balloon. I could not find 90 red M&Ms though, so a little disappointing, but I wanted to do something big. I wanted to do something fun and flashy for our 90th episode. So I wrote down the 90 lessons I think we've learned together over the past 90 episodes. And I started recording. I was super into it. I was super enthused. We were ready to go. And then I realized, that's going to take a while. It's going to take a while to get through. So this is part 2 of 3 parts of our 90 lessons, 90 episode celebration. Thank you for joining me. I hope you are having fun. And if you are, please rate and review this podcast. But for now, let's jump right back in with number 41, equipment. I want to talk about equipment. We talked about it over a few different podcast episodes. It came up in the Tech Gadgets episode. It came up in my favorites when I did an April favorites and I did an August favorites, because I really think that investing your money in equipment for your marketing can truly help your marketing if you invest properly. So the first thing I always tell everyone to invest in is not a camera. I feel like that's always the go-to thing. I do not want you to invest in a camera though, because if you have even like an iPhone from 4 years ago, that camera's great. Like, trust me, don't worry about that. It is a good camera. But what I want you to invest in instead is a microphone. Let me tell you, as someone who had an awful microphone, and then I started recording this podcast, I quickly realized how important audio is. So right now you are listening to this podcast as I am on my fancy new mic that I saved up for and I was all ready to buy, and then my parents bought it for me for my birthday anyways. So it was a very nice gift. But the point being, audio is so important. It can take your video, it can take your podcast, it can take any of your content from being a 7 to being a 10. So definitely if you're going to invest, I would say put this on your wish list. A microphone, then some lighting, and then a lens. The lens is it's a fun attachment you can put on your phone, or you can buy a camera lens, whatever you want to do, but definitely audio and lighting comes first. Number 42, farmers markets. Guys, don't skip on the farmers markets. If you are a small company and you're like, all right, but like I'm not a farmer, should I go to a farmers market? Go to any of your local farmers market, crafts market, Etsy markets, whatever it may be in your community. You may not make a ton of money. I'm not guaranteeing you're going to sell out in one afternoon, but it's a great way to build relationships and connect with your community and become a platform and a pillar of your community. Number 43, Taylor Swift. If there's anyone I'd like to point to more of how to rebrand, it's Taylor Swift. The Reputation era, the Me era, when she was all glittery, or Lover, I guess it's called. And then we have the original Taylor Swift, and we have her 1989 Taylor Swift. We have all these different Taylor Swifts, and through it all, she has a consistent idea of who she is and her music. She's a singer, but her brand constantly changes and develops with her, which is such an important lesson that I think a lot of us forget. Sometimes you will need to change. Sometimes things will happen and you need to be able to be flexible. Number 4, live Q&As. I think doing a live Q&A can truly, and I mean this, truly take your marketing to a more intense level. And intense in a good way, I promise, in a good way. Because it's a great way to connect with your audience. And I know so many of you are probably afraid of, one, being on camera, but totally get over that. Everyone has a bad angle, don't worry about that. People just want to see you and engage with you. And 2, if you're worried that people aren't going to write in, have pre-written questions ready to go. That way you can say, oh, a listener wrote in like before we started, and I can now answer their questions. Live Q&As are just a great way to connect with your audience and give them information right to the source. Number 45, brand building. So I feel like over the past 90 episodes, something we've really tried to focus on is building your brand. And it's knowing that it's more than just colors. It's more than just a logo. It is something that has to be present in your attitude, in your campaigns, in all of your marketing content. Your brand needs to be there. And it takes some time to work on it and develop it and make it something that people can recognize without actually having to see the name of your company. Number 46, movie marketing. I loved doing this podcast episode because there have been some crazy stunts in the marketing world for movies. There have just been some crazy things that Hollywood has done to try to market their movies differently. And it's a great example to point to. Not everything has to be digital. Not everything has to be traditional. There are alternate ways of marketing your movie and your content. And it's just about getting attention and building a hype about it. Number 47, gardening marketing. So I had just started my garden and I was very enthused about it. So I wanted to share my enthusiasm with all of you. And I hope I did that. I hope I achieved that. Really what we talked about is how gardening and marketing is so similar because it's about nurturing and it's about being willing to take time and develop your product and your brand, even if it doesn't happen instantly. It's about patience, care, and attention. Then we talked about moving marketing, and I had just recently moved, but I also used it as a great metaphor for how you need to figure out that if you are expanding your company in the same way I was moving into a bigger home, you really need to take a look at what you did at your last home, in your last marketing campaign, and how you will do better in the future. How are you going to lay things out better? How are you going to keep this home more clean? How are you going to make it a more positive place to live? And I think those are lessons and just something to always keep in your mind when you're thinking about your marketing and how you want it to grow and change with you. Number 49, we said the R word, rebranding. Rebranding is scary. And the reason I did a whole episode on it is because I really wanted to let you guys know that yes, it's scary. And yes, it is not something you should just jump into willy-nilly. It's something you definitely need to take time and consider and focus on, but it's not impossible. We already talked about Taylor Swift and how she does it every 5 seconds, but it's something that needs to be considered if your brand isn't working for you anymore. Your brand should work for you. You shouldn't work for it. It's a very thin line. It's a very easy relationship to neglect, but it's something to pay attention to. So if you are interested in rebranding, I guarantee you should take a little time to think about it, then go listen to the podcast episode, and then decide if it is right for you. The reason I am guaranteeing that that's a good idea, it is just such a big decision that it's not one I want anyone to jump into without considering all the possibilities. So please just do that before you do anything crazy. Number 50, Frozen. The marketing cold never bothered me anyway. We talked about Frozen and Frozen 2 and how it really took over Disney and it was like the highest grossing Disney film and all the merchandising of Olaf and how it really became a great opportunity for marketers to get to take a look at their own branding and see how they can expand. Because it was a movie about a Disney princess and a Disney queen, but somehow they found their way to be on vitamins and utensils. And I guarantee, I said this in the podcast episode, but go look around your house right now. You have something with a Frozen character on it. I guarantee it. I don't care if you are 30 years old and living on your own. You have it because it's on everything. Okay, everyone, we are going to go ahead and take our final break for today's podcast. And then when we come back, we are going to jump right back in with more of our 90 lessons. So stay tuned for more of the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jakewish, and I'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Everyone, and welcome to another episode of the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. On today's episode, we have been picking up where we left off on last episode with our 90 lessons over 90 podcast episodes. This is episode 91. Episode 92 will be part 3 of the series, and the reason I wanted to do this series, as crazy as it might seem, because I'm sure a lot of you read the description and you were like, all right, but hasn't she already talked about all of this? Why are we reviewing it? Because I think so much work has gone into these 90 episodes, and the lessons that we've learned and the ideas we've generated, and some have helped you guys, some haven't helped you guys, and I love, love, love hearing your stories, even if the story is, hey, I did not like that. It doesn't matter to me. I like hearing from you guys, and I like connecting with you guys. So I wanted this to be a celebration of that and of our community and everything we've built together. So there's so much to get through. There's so much content to get through that it had to be a 3-part series. But I love that it is. I think it's a really great way to celebrate this podcast. And I love this podcast, and I love our listeners, and I love the GSMC Podcast Network. The 2 owners of it, who I talk to on a regular basis, are truly, truly good people. They want the best for their hosts. They want the best for their company. And they are so devoted to creating amazing content that it inspires me to do the same. And I hope that you get that feeling and you understand that when you listen to these episodes. So there's a lot to get through. So let's, I'm getting all emotional over here. Let's take a step back and jump right back in with number 51, mood boards. I am recently, I've been starting a new project, and I'm very excited about it, and I decided to put together a mood board for it. I always put together a mood board for every single project I'm about to start, even if it is a small campaign to a whole new project like I'm working on right now. It is so incredibly important for me to have a mood board to get all my ideas out onto. This way you have something to look back on when you feel stuck, when you don't feel inspired, when you're unsure of where to take the project next. It is a great way to be creative and have fun and get excited about the project, but also to inspire you and help focus you on that project. So there are tons of different ways to create a mood board. There are tons of different websites you can use and tons of resources online. But honestly, nothing beats cutting out images and pasting them on a piece of poster paper. It's a great way to have a physical thing that reminds you of your company, your project, your campaign. Number 52, working from home. It's been a tough couple of months. I won't lie to you. The coronavirus has been hard on all of us, and having to work from home in marketing is hard, and I'm sure it's hard for a lot of different jobs, and I'm very lucky, very, very lucky to have a job that allows me to work from home, because I understand a lot of people did not have that luxury. So I'm fully aware that I'm very, very lucky, and I don't take any of that for granted, I hope you know. But that doesn't mean it's not hard. So we talked about on a few episodes ways to really focus yourself while working from home, getting rid of distractions, and helping you focus on your marketing and still being able to be creative and energetic and push your marketing to a new level, even if you're like, oh, I've been wearing pajamas for 4 days. So it's a really great podcast episode. All of them are great podcast episodes, but we just talked about a lot of different ways to help you be entertained again with your marketing, as silly as that sounds, but you need to be energized by it. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to create content and advertising campaigns that will energize other people. Number 53, cross-channel marketing. This one is really an interesting topic, and it's one that I have tried to talk about through all of the different episodes because it's something that is so incredibly important for you as a marketer. A lot of the things we talk about are important for the audience, but for you, it's so important that if you create a piece of content, you allow it to be marketed throughout all of your different platforms. This way, your audience on your Instagram profile will see it, as well as your Twitter, as well as your YouTube, and on your Facebook. Because remember, although you probably have a core community that follows you on everything, you might have slightly more followers on Twitter than you do on Facebook or on Instagram. So you have to be able to flex your muscles a little bit and cross-channel promote so that you can attach to all of those different customers. Number 54, guerrilla marketing. I have talked about this and I'll talk about it till I am blue in the face. Guerrilla marketing is one of the oldest forms of marketing, but it still works. It'll always work. Use it, use it, use it. Use it, but don't abuse it. Number 55, aviation gins marketing. So we actually did a whole podcast episode on alcohol and marketing and the alcohol industry and how they have done certain campaigns and what they've done differently than other industries and the rules around it. But really, I think the key message out of that was Aviation Gin and how good they are at their marketing. They know their brand is fun and light and funny, so all of their commercials, all of their campaigns, all of their advertising materials are all focused around that idea of being fun and being flirty and energetic. Number 56, podcast marketing. Ha ha ha, I know, hilarious. But there actually is a way that if you work in the podcast world, your marketing is slightly different from those other platforms. Now, we also went over, not to just speed around this for you, but number 57 is YouTube marketing, number 58 is Instagram marketing, number 59 is Facebook marketing, and number 60 is LinkedIn marketing. And the reason I just sort of speed round that for you guys is because we did individual podcast episodes on all of them. Because the truth is, all of those require separate work and separate attention and a need for details and different audiences. But as I just said, you can cross-channel promote. And as I said earlier, or maybe even in part 1, reusing your content is not impossible. So what I'd love to encourage all of you to do is between your podcast, your YouTube channel, your Instagram, your Facebook, and your LinkedIn, take a look at that. I want you to find out which one is your most used. Which one do you use a lot? Your audience is really big over there. They're always engaging with you. Which one is that? For me, it's YouTube. Which one is your least active? Which one do you not really post on a lot? You're unsure if your content's really curated or meant for that platform. And you kind of feel like it's a drag. You don't want to do it by any means. It's always a responsibility that you don't want to have. Then I want you to go onto your audience, your biggest audience one, and talk about your lowest audience one. And then I want you to go listen to whichever podcast episode is your lowest. And I want you to get better at it. I want you to spend the next month focused on your lowest performing platform. Because I promise you're going to see results you didn't even expect come up. Because it is just a great way to focus in on one platform to ensure all of your platforms are thriving. Okay, everyone, that is it for today's episode of the GSMC Marketing Podcast. Stay tuned for part 3 of our 90 lessons over 90 episodes. Thank you for listening. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jakewish, and I'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the GSMC Marketing News Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to any podcast app and you'll find all of the shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, from business news to weird news, you'll find it all on the GSMC Podcast Network. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.